Welcome everyone to This Explainer. Today we're diving into something truly incredible, a high-stakes social experiment that's just fascinating. We're looking at Nigeria's federal government colleges, and we're really going to zero in on the amazing story of Federal Government College, or FGC, Kano. We'll explore how a bold, really unprecedented educational policy became the very foundation for healing and unifying an entire country.
Now think about this for a second. How do you actually rebuild a fractured nation? I mean, it's not just some philosophical puzzle to debate, right? This was the exact urgent boots-on-the-ground reality staring down the Nigerian government in the early 1970s. After years of devastating conflict, the physical infrastructure was completely shattered, sure, but the social fabric, that was torn even deeper. The country literally desperately needed a way to heal from the inside out.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. A fractured nation needs unity.
So let's look at the timeline here because the urgency is just staggering. In 1967, the traumatic Nigerian Civil War begins, heavily driven by this intense ethnic and regional polarization. Fast forward to 1970, the war ends, but man, the scars are deep. General Yakubu Gowon's military government looked at this and realized, standard political and economic policies just weren't going to cut it. They urgently needed a massive social intervention to make sure this never happened again. So, in 1973, and get this, just a brief, almost unbelievable 3 years after the fighting stopped, Gowon mandated the creation of 12 new unity schools, dropping one into each of the 12 states that existed at the time. You really have to notice the deliberate shift in how education was handled here. Before the war, the Nigerian school system was, largely regional. You went to school with kids who looked like you, spoke your exact language, shared your local culture. It was very homogeneous. But the post-war unity schools, they completely flipped the script. Education suddenly became nationalized, intentionally diverse, and centralized under federal control. It was a complete 180. This wasn't just about throwing up some new classrooms. It was a highly calculated strategy to forge a brand new, unified national identity right from the ground up.
And that brings us to the beating heart of the whole operation, the ideological anchor. Pro unitate. That's Latin for unity. And listen, this wasn't just some catchy slogan stitched onto a blazer. This was the core, absolutely non-negotiable mission of these institutions. Every single math class, every intense sports rivalry, every strict rule about moral discipline, it was all ultimately pulling toward this one massive goal: cultivating a unified national consciousness in the minds of young Nigerians.
Section 2. The Unity School Experiment.
Now, the actual engine driving this whole experiment was this specific, fascinating admission policy called the Federal Character Principle. Basically, it was a strict quota system. It guaranteed that absolutely no single ethnic or regional group could dominate the student body. The government was literally forcing diversity by deliberately plucking students from the North, the South, the East, and the West, and just mixing them all together. Imagine being a young kid and suddenly encountering totally different languages, religions, and cultural traditions for the very first time just sitting next to you in homeroom.
Take FGC Kano, for example. Today, it boasts this elite global reputation, right? But back in February 1973, its reality was jarringly humble. I mean, the school literally opened on the site of an abandoned military barracks. There was no electricity, no water supply, and the very first cohort had fewer than 100 pioneer students. It's kind of crazy to think about. Such a massive, sweeping national vision, starting out as this total underdog.
But despite completely lacking basic amenities, the school actually thrived, and that was entirely because of its people. Early leadership was absolutely critical here, especially this man, Mr. John Bullock. He was a British educationist, and he brought this incredibly compassionate, almost fatherly demeanor to what was frankly a pretty rugged environment. He, along with this wonderfully diverse, international teaching faculty pulled from all over the globe, established an unwavering culture of academic excellence right out of the gate.
Section 3. Life inside FGC Kano.
Now, this is where the real magic happened. We're talking 6 transformative years of shared dorms, eating in the same dining halls every day, living completely away from family oversight. This intense boarding school environment was the crucible. It was right there, in the gritty day-to-day routine of living side by side, that awkward cultural misunderstandings were navigated, actual, lifelong interethnic friendships formed, and old tribal prejudices slowly but surely started to melt away. These students eventually graduated with what alumni now proudly call a completely detribalized mindset.
Section 4. Building leaders for tomorrow.
But how do you actually forge these future leaders? Well, the school used a highly structured, strict discipline and prefecture hierarchy. So you'd start as a junior student, mostly just keeping your head down and learning the ropes. But if you showed real character and academic merit, you'd get bumped up to prefect. Suddenly, you're the one mentoring others and resolving conflicts. And at the very top of that pyramid, the head boy or girl. This whole system wasn't just about, keeping kids in line. It systematically built up a student's capacity to handle intense responsibility, ultimately prepping them to step out onto the global stage.
And honestly, the absolute proof of concept is in the alumni themselves. The graduates of this grand experiment went on to successfully populate the absolute highest ranks of the Nigerian government, the military, and civil society. We're talking heavy hitters, from the late Dan Baba Suntai, the former governor of Taraba State, to the former Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Hussaini Adamu, all the way to Air Vice Marshal Christian Chukwu. This pipeline literally delivered on its promise. It built leaders who actually held a unified national perspective.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Section 5, a 50-year legacy.
50. That number represents a truly massive milestone. The Unity schools recently celebrated their 50th anniversaries, and it is a big deal. Seriously, if you hop online and look up the vibrant celebrations over on the FGC Kaduna 50 YouTube channel, you can just feel the enduring pride of these alumni. And it's not just local, there's this massive, wildly active global diaspora like the FGC Kano USA alumni group, who are deeply, deeply connected to their roots and still actively supporting the institution today.
And you know what? The government's focus on these schools isn't just some historical footnote. It is happening right now. Look at this recent quote from the Minister of State for Education, Professor Sawiba Saeed Ahmed. He literally just conducted an unannounced surprise inspection tour of FGC Kano to directly assess the infrastructure and check in on student welfare himself. Like he said, the government absolutely needs to interact directly with the major stakeholders, the learners and the teachers, to understand the real boots-on-the-ground challenges and ensure their educational investments aren't going to waste.
Now, of course, challenges do persist. We're talking ongoing infrastructure debates and even a 2024 plan to unbundle the colleges. But the push to modernize is incredibly strong. For instance, the federal government is right now rolling out brand new digital platforms specifically for teacher capacity building, and they made it super accessible. The ministry pointed out that as long as a teacher has an Android phone, whether they're in a bustling city or a rural village, they can log in and join this training. It's all about keeping the excellence of these schools alive for the next generation. So, looking back, the Pro Unitate experiment absolutely proved that deliberate, highly diverse, shared educational experiences could literally weave a fractured nation back together. It's an amazing blueprint. So, as we wrap up, I want you to look at the divisions in the world right now and ask yourself, how might education bridge divides in your own community today? It's a really powerful question to sit with. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.